Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're stripping away the jargon and talk about the foundation of everything we do in this field. You'll see in the presentation we're covering core pillars today. The first thing you'll have to understand is that cybersecurity at its heart is a human problem. We often get caught up in the latest firewalls or AI-driven protection tools, but the reality is much simpler. Most major breaches don't happen because of a super hacker cracked a complex code. They happen because someone clicked a phishing link, reviewed a weak password, or left a digital foreign box. And why does this matter? Because in our world, cyber attacks have real world consequences. We aren't just talking about computer crashing, we're talking about financial loss, identity theft, and even the disruption of hospitals and grids. To manage these consequences, we use a simple formula to prioritize our work. Threat plus weakness equals risk. Think of a threat as an external force, like a hacker or malware. A weakness or vulnerability, an internal gap, like an unpatched software or a weak password. Risk is the actual likelihood of something bad happening. While you can't always control who is trying to attack you, you have total control over your weaknesses. By fixing the weaknesses, you neutralize the risk. So, how do we actually defend a network? We use three main stages. One, defense in depth. Never rely on just one layer of security. It's like a castle. You want a moat, then high walls, then a gatehouse, and finally the treasury vault. If one layer fails, then the next one holds. Second, that principle of least privilege. This is huge. Users should have access to the data they absolutely need to do their jobs. This limits damage. If an entry-level account is compromised, the attacker shouldn't be able to reach the CEO's files. And then third, contain access by segmentation. A network, you ensure a breach in one area doesn't lead to a total system failure. It's the difference between a bad afternoon, company ending event. Now, let's look at a real world scenario to see how these concepts play out. Imagine an employee at a large firm using the same simple password, let's say coffee123 at a coffee shop with an exclamation point at the end. For both their work email and a local coffee shop's reward portal. First, the coffee shop or security website is hacked and that password is leaked. The hacker then tries the same credentials on the firm's network. Because the employee didn't have multi-factor authentication enabled, the hacker gets in. However, this firm, because the firm practices least privilege, the hacker is stuck. They can only see specific employee files, not the payroll or client databases. Because they had defensive depth monitors in place, the system noticed a login from a unusual location and locked the account within minutes. The strategy worked. As you move forward in your career, I want you to carry two rules with you. Think defensively and act intentionally. Assume an attack will happen eventually and don't let your habits run on autopilot. Verify every link, use a password manager, and stay skeptical. Cybersecurity isn't a product you buy, it's a practice you live every day. For this video, I didn't want to seem like a high pressure sales pitch or dive into a overly dense technical jargon right away. Instead, we're building a professional and approachable foundation for anyone new to the field like I was. Our goal is to align with the core knowledge areas you'll find in entry-level roles and industry standard certifications, specifically the CompTIA Security Plus, since that's the one I have. Think of this as a start of a structured learning journey. Like cybersecurity is for everyone. One of the biggest myths in the industry is that cybersecurity is only for the specialized security teams. That couldn't be further from the truth. Cybersecurity is discipline rooted in responsibility and intentional decision making. If you were to interact with a digital system, which is pretty much everyone nowadays, this is relevant to you. We're moving away from the idea that this is a niche technical specialty and toward the reality that security is a foundational skill set for the modern world where everything is digital. So what to expect? If you're feeling a bit intimidated by the topic, just take a breath. You don't need an advanced technical background to get value from this session. We're going to focus on three things really. The concepts is understanding the why behind security, the language of it, cybersecurity, learning the terminology so you can speak the same language as a pro, and a mindset that they have, developing a defensive way of thinking. By the end of this, my hope is that you'll feel more confident and less anxious about navigating the cyber landscape and IT field. So let's get started. Now let's dive into one of the most important concepts you'll ever learn in this field, Technology alone does not secure systems, people do, which outlines how our personal choices shape our security posture. Like the target is you, the person. Organizations spend millions of dollars on high-tech defenses like firewalls, encryption, advanced endpoint protection. But here's the secret: attackers frequently bypass all that by targeting human behavior instead of software bugs because it's easy. Think about phishing, like email phishing, social engineering, or credential theft. These aren't just words. These attacks don't look for technical flaws in the systems. They exploit human trust, curiosity, and sometimes just a simple mistake. This is why we have to approach cybersecurity as a people-centered discipline. It's just not about the code. It's about the person behind the keyboard. So you're like in a dual role. As a user, you actually play a dual role in the ecosystem. You're the primary target for the attacker. Every time you click a link, open an attachment, or even just reuse a password for convenience, there are security implications. You are the first line of defense. An informed, security-aware user can prevent a major incident by recognizing suspicious email or following the best practice. Behavior often behavior often has a great Behavior often has a much greater impact on security outcomes than system design. Even the most perfectly architected network can be compromised if the user bypasses the control because it's annoying. Conversely, a strong security culture where people talk to each other and report anomalies can keep an organization safe even with limited technical resources. So, for example, let's say you get an urgent link. Let's look at a scenario we all seen. You get an email that looks like it's from HR or your bank saying there's an urgent problem with your account and you need to click on the link right now to fix it. On the technical side, the company's email filter might catch it, but for brand new zero-day phishing attack, it might land right in your inbox. The human side, this is where real battles happen. If you're stressed and rushing, you might click, but if you have a defensive mindset, you'll pause and check the sender's actual email address and realize it's actual scam and not from anyone that you ever received something from. Your individual decision in a moment is more powerful than any firewall the company has installed. So you gotta own the role. Goal here is to shift your mindset. Cybersecurity isn't just IT's job, it's your job too. We all have a personal role in protecting our systems, our data, and most importantly, each other. In our next segment, we're going to look at the specific risk equation I mentioned earlier so you can start calculating these threats for yourself. So stick around for the next slide. Now that we have an understanding that humans are at the center of this, let's talk about the why. Why does all this effort exist? It boils down to three core pillars: privacy, safety, and financial stability. Privacy, protecting the who. The first pillar is privacy. This is what most people think of when they hear cybersecurity. It's the protection of personal, sensitive, proprietary information from unauthorized eyes. This includes personal identifiers, things like your social security number or your home address, medical data, your private health records, intellectual property, a company's secret sauce, or future designs. When privacy is compromised, the damage is personal. Individuals suffer from identity theft, and organizations lose the trust and credibility they spent years building. Once trust is gone, it's incredibly hard to get back. So, second, safety. Cyber in the physical world. The second pillar. And this is one that many people overlook is safety. We have to expand our view of cybersecurity beyond just data protection and into the physical world. Our digital systems increasingly control real-world processes, like in the healthcare, life-saving hospital equipment and patient monitors, or in transportation, air traffic controllers and autonomous vehicle systems, or within the infrastructure with power grids and water treatment plants that keep our cities running. A cyber attack on these systems isn't just a digital norm. They can cause physical harm, disrupt essential services, or even endanger lives. This is why cybersecurity is so closely tied to public safety and societal stability. And third, but not least, financial stability, the economical impact. The final pillar is financial stability. The economic consequences of a cyber incident can be staggering. Things like breaches, ransomware, and fraud lead to direct losses, money stolen or paid out in ransom, regulatory fines, massive penalties from the government for failing to protect people's data you're supposed to be responsible for, legal action, lawsuits from affected customers, the class action lawsuits, they got to pay millions of dollars, and reputational damage. Losing customers because they no longer feel safe doing business with you. Like they know that hackers is stronger than your IT team. Why would they do business with you? So recovery isn't just expensive. It takes a massive amount of time and resources. For some organizations, a single major incident can be financially devastating to total closure. So, in conclusion, making it real. The reason we talk about these three pillars is the ground cybersecurity and the real impact. It's just not about abstract threats or lines of code. It's about outcomes we all care about: our privacy, our physical safety, and our money. When you understand that these three things are on the line, it becomes clear why security controls, compliance, and best practices aren't just red tape. They're necessary safeguards for the way we live today. Now we're going to discuss the ripple effect of cyber attacks. Continue from those three pillars, it's vital to realize that a cyber incident is never just confined to a single computer or a noisy server in a dark room. A breach creates ripple effects that wash over an entire organization, impacting operations, people, and the very foundation of trust. So let's talk about how an attack will put you in operational paralysis. The first ripple is operational downtime. When systems go dark, businesses' processes stop. Services are disrupted, employees are physically prevented from doing their jobs. For many organizations, even just a few hours of downtime can have serious cascading consequences. Like, imagine a hospital that can't access patient records or a logistics company that can't track its fleet. The digital blockage becomes a real world standstill. So that end up leading to the erosion of trust. Next comes the loss of trust. This is often the hardest part to fix. When a breach occurs, customers and partners may lose confidence in an organization's ability to keep their data safe. So this will affect their reputational damage, which often lasts much longer than just the technical fix. And then we could think about long-term growth, think about the company. And that could be stunning as customer loyalty evaporates. Building that trust doesn't happen overnight. It can take years of consistent effort to prove that you are reliable. So on top of that, how the people feel about it, technical requirements it take to get back up. And on top of that, it would be legal regulatory fallout. Then we hit if an organization fails to protect regulated data, they aren't just in trouble with their customers, they're in trouble with the law. This includes massive fines and compliance penalties, expensive lawsuits from affected parties, hidden costs like price of deep dive investigations, mandatory notifications, and total remediation efforts. These costs compound quickly, turning a security failure into a massive financial burden. So that's why infrastructure and safety is important. In the most extreme cases, especially in sectors like healthcare, energy, and transportation, cyber attacks can contribute to infrastructure failures or direct safety risks. We have to understand that our cybersecurity decisions directly influence real-world outcomes. Whether you're an analyst or an engineer, the responsibility carries immense because these stakes are as real as it gets. So for a real example, let's talk about the, the chances of a supply chain freeze in manufacturing. Think about a major shipping company getting hit with a ransomware. Operation their ships are at a standstill because the manifest systems are encrypted by a hacker. The trust of their clients, the people waiting for their goods start looking for a new shipping partner because they can't afford the delay. And legally, the company faces penalties for missing delivery deals and potentially violating data protection laws. One computer problem creates a global supply chain crisis. This is the ripple effect in action. Now we'll speak on defining threat and the relative risk. So we we need to speak the same language to navigate through cybersecurity. There are three foundational terms we must understand: threat, vulnerability, and risk. These concepts allow us to move past abstract fears and start making informed decisions. The threat, the who or what. First, let's define the threat. A threat is a potential danger capable of causing harm. It's the who or what behind the potential incident. Threats generally fall into two categories: malicious threats. These include hackers, organized crime, and even malicious insiders. Non-malicious threats, these are things like natural disasters, accidental system failures, and simple human error. Identifying a threat means asking what could go wrong, or who or what could cause it. The vulnerability is the weak. Next is the vulnerability. Vulnerability that a threat can exploit. Vulnerabilities exist everywhere: software code, hardware systems, configurations, business processes, or even human behavior, like we said before. Common examples include unpatched systems, software with known bugs that haven't been fixed, weak passwords, easily guessable credentials, misconfigurations such as security settings that were left at the default or set up incorrectly, lack of training, users who don't know how to spot a scam like phishing. Crucially, vulnerabilities on their own cause damage. They just create the opportunity for a threat to succeed. And third, the risk, the likelihood and impact. Finally, we have risk. Risk represents the likelihood that a specific threat will actually exploit a specific vulnerability combined with the impact of that if it occurs. Risk is how organizations prioritize their efforts. We recognize that not all threats and vulnerabilities carry the same level, so we focus our research on where risk is the highest. So for a real example with this, let's look at the front door. Excuse me. To put these together, think of a house. The threat, a burglar is looking for a home to enter. The vulnerability, unlocked front door. The risk, the high likelihood that a burglar would see the unlocked door and enter your home, resulting in the loss of your belongings. If you lock the door, you remove the vulnerability, but significantly lowers the risk. Even though the threat, the burglar still exists in the neighborhood. So in conclusion, managing and not eliminating. This field is fundamental. Remember that. Cybersecurity is about managing, it's not eliminating entirely. There is no such thing as 100% secure. You have to keep that mindset. By adopting this mindset, we're prepared for more advanced discussions around security controls and how to make tough decisions on what to protect first. Next, we'll look at how we build the blocks using the principle of defensive depth. So, for example, with defensive depth, like we've already talked about high level first. So let's get into the specifics of where most attacks actually start. Authentication. If cybersecurity has a front door, it's your password, and unfortunately for many of us, that door is wide open. The weakness of a single factor. Authentication is one of the most critical attack surfaces because it is the primary way to prove who you are to a system. However, many people still rely on single factor authentication, which depends entirely on something you know, your password. The problem humans aren't great at passwords. We prioritize convenience leading to weak passwords using simple, easy to guess words or sequences, or password reviews using the same password across multiple sites from your bank to a random form. Because we often favor ease over security, single factor logins are incredibly vulnerable to modern automated attacks. So how attackers get in? Attackers don't sit there typing and guessing manually. They use automation to scale their efforts. Brute force and dictionary text. These tools cycle through millions of common words and character combinations in seconds to crack your passwords, like hashcat or netcat or jack the ripper, or credential stuff. This is the most dangerous sequence of reuse. If a hacker steals your password from one leaked database, they will stuff those credentials into hundreds of other sites, like your email workflow to see where else they work. Even a strong password becomes useless the moment you use it. As we've been discussing throughout this series, there are risks largely behavioral. Poor habits and lack of awareness are what drive authentication failure. This reinforces our core theme. Human behavior is the single biggest factor influencing security outcomes. Think of your password like a key. Imagine you have a master key that fits your front door, your car, your office. You feel safe because it's complex, high security key, but then you lose that key at a local park. Now whoever finds it just have access to the park. They have access to your home, your car, your job by using a strong key, create a single point of failure that compromise your entire life. So how do we fix this without making our lives impossible? We use a multi-factor authentication, or MFA. Instead of just using something you know, a password, MFA requires a second factor like something you have, a code sent to your phone or something you are, a fingerprint. The simple step drastically reduces risk because even if the attacker steals your password, they still can't get past the second lock. This is why organizations enforce strict login requirements. It's not to annoy you, it's a practical control designed to protect both you and the system. And now that we've seen some of the authentication, it's clear we can't pull our egg on back ski. This leads us to one of the most powerful concepts in cybersecurity, defensive depth. This is just a single tool. It's just a strategic approach that relies on multiple overlapping security controls to protect our assets. To visualize this, think of a medieval castle. A castle just doesn't have a front door. It has a moat, high outer wall, guarded gatehouses, and finally a fortified inner keep. No single wall provides complete protection, but those layered defenses work together to deter, detect, and delay attackers. If the attacker swims the moat, they still have to scale the wall. If they scale the wall, they still have to deal with the guard. The goal isn't necessarily to be impenetrable, it's to make an attack so difficult and time-consuming that it's no longer worth the effort. In the digital world, we build our castle using three distinct types of control. Physical control, these prevent unauthorized physical access facilities and equipment. Think of things you can touch like locks, security badges, cameras, and physical barriers. Technical controls. These use technology to protect systems and data. This includes your firewalls, encryption, endpoint protection like antivirus, and MFA, multi-factor authentication, we just discussed. And then there's administrative controls. These are the human side of the castle. They consist of policies, procedures, and security training, incident response plans that guide how people behave within the system. The key takeaway here is that no single control should be a single point of failure. Defensive depth is built on the assumption that failures will occur. It focuses on resilience rather than perfection. If one control fails, say a technical firewall is bypassed, the other layers like administrative monitoring or physical data centers remain in place to reduce the overall impact. This layer approach is a standard strategic requirement used across almost every major industry security framework. Let's look at how this works at your local bank. Let's say the physical. You have a heavy vault during security cameras watching the line. Then the technical. The vault has a digital timer and alarm system linked to the police station. And then on the administrative level, there's a policy that requires two different employees to provide two different keys to open a vault at the same time. If a thief manages to sneak past the cameras, which is the physical barrier, they still can't open the vault because they lack the two keys required by the bank's policy. Administrative success. The system is resilient. So understanding this defense in depth helps you see how individual security tools, the stuff we've been talking about throughout this series, fit into a much broader security architecture. It's about building a system where the whole is much stronger than the sum of its parts. Next, we'll talk about how we control exactly who gets through the castle gates with the principle of least privilege. Principle of least privilege is so important. And why do they do it? Because excessive permissions reduce our attack surface. If every employee has administrative access to the entire network, a single compromised account becomes a total catastrophe. By limiting access, we amplify ability to obtain damage breach actually occurs. If a professional environment we use In a professional environment, we use a few techniques to manage this role-based access control, RBAC, which permissions are assigned based on your job. A marketing specialist does need access to the payroll database, and an HR manager needs access to the source code for our software. Also, we use JIT, just-in-time access. Elevated privileges aren't granted; they are specifically needed only for limited duration. It's like having temporary key that expires after an hour. And last but not least, we have regular access review. Organization must periodically audit who has access to what. This helps remove permissions creep. Those unnecessary permissions that tend to accumulate over time as people change their projects or department. So while it might sound restrictive, the benefits of least privilege are massive. Reduce lateral movement. If an attacker gets into one account, they can't easily jump into other sensitive systems because that account simply doesn't have the permission to go there. So that's simplified compliance. It's much easier to pass an audit than prove exactly who has access to sensitive data. Improve incidents of response when access is limited. Features are significantly obtained, investigate, and fix. So think about it at a large office building. Scenario A. Every employee is given the master key that opens every office, the server room, the CO desk. If one person does key, the entire building is at risk. Scenario B, least privilege. Most employees have a badge that opens the front door in their specific office suite. Janitorial staff has the key for the closets. Only the IT director has the key for the server room. In scenario B, if a regular employee uses their badge, the server room, and the CEO files remain perfectly secure. This is the power limiting access. So I want to be clear. The principle of least privilege isn't about being stingy with access or slowing down productivity. It's about enabling secure, intentional access. When we treat access control as a protective strategy than an obstacle, we create a resilient environment where everyone can do their job without becoming accidental security. Okay, this video getting long. I'm gonna keep it under 30 minutes. So We just talked about limiting who has the keys, but now let's talk about what happens when one of those keys is stolen. The slide reinforces the real world value of access control by focusing on one goal, containment. The biggest danger in a breach isn't just the initial entry, it's what happens next. Attackers want to move laterally, jumping from one computer to another until they find the most sensitive data. However, when we have contained access, an attacker who compromises an account with minimal permissions find themselves stuck. Their ability to move across the network or escalate their privileges to a superuser status is significantly reduced. We have essentially built a digital cage around a specific account. In cybersecurity, we often talk about the blast radius. Think of a breach like an explosion. Without containment, the blast spreads through the entire building, destroying everything. With containment, the blast is confined to a single room. By limiting the damage to a single system or a specific segment of the network, we improve our detection response and recovery outcome. It's much easier to clean up one room than it is to build the whole house. The concept is a core pillar of modern security models like zero trust. Zero trust assumes that a breach will happen eventually. Instead of trying to build an impenetrable wall, they focus on minimizing the impact of the inevitable breach. This brings all of our foundational principles together. Defense in depth provides the layers, least privilege ensures you only have what you need. Contained access ensures that in one layer or when you is compromised, the rest of the organization remains safe. To understand containment, look at how a submarine is built. A submarine is just one big open tube. It's divided into separate compartments by thick steel walls called bulkheads. The incident, a torpedo hits one section of the sub. It starts taking on water. The containment. The crew seals the door up to that one compartment. The result. The one room might be lost, but the rest of the submarine stays dry. The ships keep moving. In cybersecurity, containing access is our bulkhead and what keeps the whole ship from sinking when one part of the network gets hit. In conclusion, this is a major mindset shift. Success in cybersecurity is measured by the unrealistic goal of preventing every single incident because that's like impossible. True success is measured by how well you limit the damage when something goes wrong. If you can survive a breach, however your access is contained, you won the battle. Thanks for watching this series on fundamentals. And to conclude video 2, this slide emphasizes the mindset of a modern security professional. Thinking defensively means anticipating failure, questioning assumptions, and considering how systems might be misused. Actually, intentionally means making conscious, informed decisions rather than relying on means or habits. Cybersecurity is not just a collection of tools, doors, or ways. Every configuration choice, access decision, and user action prevents risk. Developing this mindset early emerging professionals build strong security instinct.